Hey guys, welcome to the first Snapchat Q&A. Sent out a message on my Snapchat the other day saying if you guys have any questions, shoot them through to me and I will record them all or as many as I can and upload them via YouTube. So this is the first one, or the first episode I guess. I've got probably sort of 15 to 20 questions to get through. You guys sent through a whole bunch of really good questions for me. Gonna make it really quick. It's just gonna be done in one take. Just gonna get it out, try and give you guys as much of an insight into the questions you're asking as possible. And obviously, please feel free to keep sending them through. Okay, so obviously it's Monday morning here in Sydney, chilling out on my couch at home. Thought I'd get this video out before we start the week. So hopefully I can give you guys a bit of an insight into what you're after. Obviously, if you do have anything else, send it through to me. If it is anything DUP related, please send me through an email. You guys have bought, a bunch of you guys have bought it, which is great, and getting some really good feedback on that. But if you do, for any reason, have any questions related to that, please leave them off Snapchat, send me an email so I can actually answer them properly for you. Let's get into it. First things first, the first question I got, how to make things symmetrical. Okay, so every now and then you might find that one side of your body overpowers another. Maybe you want to bring up one side more quickly than the other because for whatever reason, one is more developed than the other. The best way to do that is to stick with dumbbell training or sort of unilateral stuff, essentially allowing the muscles to work independently of one another. If you can work towards or work to the strength of the weaker or smaller side, that will allow that side essentially to fatigue quicker and to essentially be more worked and essentially catch up to the stronger side. Don't try and throw extra reps at your stronger side feeling like it isn't getting a workout. That's only going to exacerbate the problem. Work towards your weaker side and stick with as much sort of unilateral stuff, even machine work that is again allows you to work independently from side to side. That will help you grow and help you fix that problem. How to build a horseshoe tricep. Okay, so the horseshoe is essentially the shape of the tricep as it is. All you really need to do is focus on building enough muscle for your tricep to look developed enough and obviously get lean enough to reveal that muscle that you built. I have posted a fairly in-depth article on how to build a big set of arms or a decent set of arms, which I will again put in the description section below in case you guys haven't seen it. It's just on the blog section of my website. It covers absolutely everything on the ins and outs of training your arms, how to hit them from different angles and how to manipulate different angles to make sure that you can make as many gains as possible. Discussion on reverse dieting. Someone requested a bit of a discussion on reverse dieting. So in line with that, I got another one as well on sort of how to do a reverse diet properly, how much you should add in terms of calories per week, that sort of thing. So first of all, I think one of the problems these days is people tend to get confused with reverse dieting and bulking. Reverse dieting is essentially the process of getting out of a deficit. And from personal experience, I tend to be a firm believer now in getting out of a deficit and getting back up to maintenance as quickly as possible. The problem with doing so more slowly, i.e. increasing your calories very slowly from the end of your cut, is that essentially you're just drawing out the length of time you're in a deficit by reducing the size of that deficit. The sooner you can get back to maintenance, the sooner you can begin to focus on progressing, and the sooner you can get out of a state where your body is essentially unhappy. Your body doesn't like dieting, it's a painful experience. If you consider putting your finger or your hand into a pot of boiling water, right? It's a painful experience. Would you draw it out slowly or would you yank it out bloody quickly? Same goes with dieting. The sooner you can get out of a deficit, again, the sooner you can focus on progressing and beginning to feel more normal again. Obviously, there are some fairly extensive side effects from being in a deficit for an extended period of time. As soon as you get back to maintenance and even above, you're going to start to feel a lot better in terms of energy, training performance, mood, sex drive, all sorts of things that are going to improve as a consequence of getting back to maintenance and eating above. So in that regard, I would look at getting back to maintenance, or theoretical maintenance at least, as quickly as possible. 1, 2, 3 weeks max, ideally. Okay, yeah, you're going to hold a little bit of extra water as you fill out with more carbs. Whether you do the whole reversing thing over 2 or 3 weeks or 30 weeks, you're probably going to hold the same amount of water regardless. It's just whether or not it happens in a short period of time or a long period of time. Get over it, it's going to happen. Get through that and you'll be fine. In terms of how much you should add each week, in order to get back to maintenance, I would look at adding anywhere from a quarter of what you're eating to a third back into your diet straight away. That should take you pretty close to your theoretical maintenance after that deficit dieting phase. From there, if you're at maintenance, typically anything you add from there is essentially sending you into a surplus and you're now bulking. Reverse dieting is a short process. It should be a short process. Take it from me, I've done it the long way, and in hindsight, whilst it did allow me to stay leaner for longer because I had a few things to stay lean for, I'm talking back when I reverse dieted after my show in 2014, it allowed me to stay lean for a shoot that I had sometime after my show, whilst still being able to eat a little bit more. Next time I compete, there's no way I'm going to do that again because it was a painful experience. It made me feel like I was dieting for 8, 9, 10 months. And it was just horrible. If I had my time again, I would be increasing my intake much quicker, getting back to maintenance and allowing my body to recover properly. Typically, if you're looking to bulk or maintain your conditioning as best you can, I would look at adding calories in very slowly. There's no reason to add in any extra protein. You just need to look at adding fats and carbs. Anywhere from 1 to 5 grams of fat and 5 to 25 grams of carbs is probably going to be all you need. And again, just track your progress, and if you find your weight's not increasing, if you find it is increasing, you can just adjust accordingly. Obviously, the more aggressively you add calories, the more likely you are to gain weight. So in that regard, considering how you wish to progress, i.e. if you want to gain weight quickly, then add more food more aggressively. The reverse is also true. There is no right or wrong way to do it. Essentially, reverse dieting is just the process of getting out of a deficit. Once you're out of it, I mean, it's really up to you as to how you wish to proceed from there. But keep in mind, there is no one way of doing it when it comes to reverse dieting. The idea is to get more calories back into your diet. Whether or not you maintain a cyclical approach in terms of your carbohydrate intake is irrelevant. As long as your intake is going up over time and sending you back towards maintenance over the course of a week, you reverse dieted successfully. How to lean bulk after a long cut. Pretty much just touched on that. Get back to maintenance as quickly as possible and then add calories very slowly. If you want to maintain your conditioning whilst bulking, then consider adding calories as slowly as possible and trying to gain weight as slowly as possible. There's a lot of talk about 500 grams a week is optimal for muscle building. That may be the case. It may not be the case if you wish to stay as lean as possible. I would try to aim maybe for 100 to 300 grams a week of weight gain. If you can do it more slowly than that, awesome. Chances are you're probably going to gain less body fat. The best way to lean bulk is to eat at a very slow, very small, controlled calorie surplus. Fat distribution wise, where do I personally store the most fat? Well, probably on my love handles, to be honest. My abs lean out very quickly. My legs, not so much, but definitely sort of from, I guess, around my belly button to my knees is probably where I hold the most fat. My calves have never been particularly lean either, I guess. So those are the areas for me, Ryan. Is it better to split up accessory work from DUP days, or is it more optimal to do accessory work with your main lifts? Okay, again, DUP is a style of programming. It's not a specific program. If you wish to get accessory work in on your main lifting days, for whatever reason, efficiency, personal preference, whatever, you can, that's fine. Typically that is how I will do things. My current programming, I'm only using calculated lifts for squat and deadlift. So in that regard, whenever I squat, I'm typically going to throw some added work in there simply because I haven't got enough work out of my squat or my deadlift to warrant a full session. So yeah, I'll add on accessory work at the end of my main lifts. The thing you want to make sure you're doing though is ensuring that you're prioritizing your main lift. So no accessory work ideally is going to impact your performance for your main lifts, if that makes sense. As an example, you probably don't want to go do 10 sets of leg extensions the day before you squat. Makes sense, right? Ab training frequency, how much is too much? Abs are a muscle like any other. They tend to be able to handle a fairly large amount of endurance and volume. You could probably train them a little bit more frequently than you train other muscles, but essentially they are a muscle like any other. So if you can get in 2 to 3 ab sessions a week, you're probably going to be set. As always, if you can try and increase volume over time, make them stronger, you'll be set. That's all you really need to do. Is it good to do cardio on a day off of DUP specific training? Well, again, it all comes in line with what is going to work best for you. How can you implement the training that you need to implement in a sustainable manner? Are you going to be able to do what you're doing for a long period of time in order to see progress? Okay, so if you have to do cardio in order to get to where you want to be, whether it be because you don't want to drop your food anymore or because you're just at that point through a prep, whatever, that you need to be doing cardio, get it in whenever you can. If you can, I would definitely suggest prioritizing resistance training, particularly main lifts, over cardio. If you have to do both in the same day, hit your main lifts first or hit your resistance training first to help with maintaining that muscle mass, and then hit your cardio later or at a separate time throughout the day, ideally with a meal in between so you can refuel for the second session. There is really no advantage to training like a busted ass in that second session. Get some energy in if possible. Best way to train shoulders for growth. Okay, I'm going to make this question a little bit more broad. Best way to train for growth. If you want something to grow, you need to focus on increasing total training volume over time. Total training volume is sets times reps times weight lifted, right? So if you're doing 10 sets of 10 by 100 kilos, say we're squatting, 10 by 10 by 10, add them all together, job done. There's your total volume. Over time, so long as that number on the far right is increasing, you're going to be giving yourself every chance of growing, provided you're eating at a surplus. That is, you need to be eating more calories than you're burning in order to grow. Typically, I stick with 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and then from there, it's all about how many calories you're eating. Fats and carbs doesn't really matter how much you're eating of each, so long as you're gaining weight, even if only slowly, whilst increasing volume, you're going to be giving yourself every chance of growing. I'd suggest training everything 2 to 3 times a week, in a similar fashion to a DUP style routine, or even a push-pull upper-lower split, so you can get in a couple of sessions a week. That is going to help you with increasing volume over time, particularly if you're only training things once a week at the moment. If you want to grow, focus on volume over time and increasing that volume over time and eating a surplus. Done. Experience. What is your experience with intermittent fasting and what are your thoughts on it? Okay. After I competed, I think my second show, I did struggle after my competition with reining it back in. I wanted to eat everything. I wanted to eat literally anything and everything all the time. I was very hungry and I had a lot of trouble controlling my hunger and tracking my intake for that matter. I was not in a good position, not in a good place. So for me, I decided to try intermittent fasting, and I found it worked really well in terms of hunger control. It's not a magical approach to eating. It does not outweigh calories in versus calories out. It's not a magical fasting method which is going to help you burn more fat. It doesn't work like that. It is simply a method of hunger control whereby you are reducing the amount of time throughout the day that you can eat in order to fit your daily calories into a smaller window and hence feel fuller over that period of time. Essentially, when you're not eating, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, and it means when you can eat big. Again, it's not magic. So for me, it worked for a period of time. It helped me get that whole hunger thing under control and back to a reasonable position or reasonable place in terms of where I was with my food and being able to move forward. The only other thing I can sort of elaborate on is that socially it can be a little bit challenging. I mean, I love going out for breakfast now. Me and Beck go out for breakfast quite regularly. When I was fasting, that's not really an option. Typically, I mean, obviously it depends on the sort of fasting method that you end up choosing. I did the lean gains approach, which is sort of a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour feeding window, typically from around 12 to 1 o'clock, which means you're eating lunch and then afternoon tea and dinner. Kind of rules out breakfast, so it can have a function. It can serve a purpose. Is it optimal? No. If you want to build and maintain as much lean muscle mass as possible, whether you're bulking or cutting, you want to be giving your body a steady stream of amino acids and a steady stream of protein. Fasting doesn't allow that, but it does serve a purpose. If it works for you and ultimately allows you to hit your daily macros more consistently for a sustainable period of time, awesome, then it's for you. But it's definitely not optimal. How do I prep a meal from weighing to cooking? Okay, it is fairly self-explanatory. Let's use breakfast and lunch for examples. Typically, I eat sort of oats and Greek yogurt with some peanut butter in the morning and some fruit. Typically, so I get my bowl out, put it on the scales, set it to 0, put my yogurt on, set it to 0, put my oats in, set it to 0, stir it through, put my frozen raspberries in, again setting it to 0 beforehand, just logging as I go. Typically each day is pretty similar, so I'll just start, I'll just copy each entry from day to day and change the quantities slightly if that requires. Some days I might be a little bit hungry in the morning, in which case I might increase the serving sizes. Yeah, essentially it's that easy. I'm just pouring my meal straight into my bowl, which is on a scale, and allowing me to track the amount of each food that I'm eating. When it gets to something like lunch, typically I've been eating workout meals. Again, you can check the link below if you want to check them out. Their foods lately have been super tasty. They've got a few great additions to the menu, but they come pre-prepared. So I order them specifically for my goals. I've got the macros listed on the website, so I can just enter them in accordingly. I'll buy a couple of batches of different meats and then just weigh them out based on how much I've got for each meal. I typically only have one meal throughout the day, so I might weigh out sort of 150 or 200 grams of cooked meat. It's probably not as accurate as weighing it raw, simply due to the fact that the longer you cook something, the more dehydrated it's going to get. So if you really burn the crap out of something, it's probably going to weigh not very much and give you an inaccurate way of tracking, I guess. But for the most part, I'm doing the same sort of thing. I'm staying consistent. So over time, it's really going to even itself out. If I'm prepping and getting closer to the stage, maybe I'll consider only using raw weight. But until it's broken, there's no need to fix it. And then from there, again, I'll just weigh out the carb portions, weigh out the veggies, and eat. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Just make sure that you're weighing everything that you're eating, or you're weighing everything that has calories in it. Or depending on how strict you want to be, maybe you just want to weigh the super calorie dense stuff and not worry about things like vegetables, which are typically not quite as heavy in terms of their calories. But if you can get a set of scales, you'll be set. How do I stay motivated? This is a tough question. I get this question a lot, and I think at the end of the day, motivation ultimately has to come from within. You have to have an underlying reason as to why you want to achieve something. Sure, you can find external sources of motivation which will help fuel the internal motivation, but if there's no form of internal motivation, you're going to have a very hard time taking action and looking at doing something. For me, it's always been about being better, being stronger, being faster, doing more than what I did yesterday. I guess now it's at a point where, I'm fortunate. I've got a few people that tend to look over my shoulder and like to check in with what I do and follow me on social media. So I guess there's a huge part of it now which revolves around inspiring others and helping them do the same. I think the really important thing is, particularly to get started, is to figure out why you want to get a better body, why you want to improve, why is it important to you that you change what you're doing. If you can answer that question, you won't need to keep asking what motivates others. Continue using those external sources of motivation, and continue following those people that motivate and inspire you as well. But at the end of the day, all those external sources should be fueling and driving the internal motivation that you already have, ideally. Pros and cons of a lifting belt. Okay, so when you're lifting heavy weights, predominantly squatting and deadlifting, you want to focus on having a rock hard, rigid core to assist with maintaining a rigid structure throughout the lift. The more tension you can create and the more force you can push through your core and through your body, the easier the lift is going to become. A lifting belt helps essentially by reinforcing the strength through your core and giving you something to push against, whether it be squatting or deadlifting. So I guess the pros are, it helps you maintain a more rigid structure. It helps you lift more weight as a consequence. Typically it's much easier to lift more weight with a belt simply because it is added support. I mean, it's not quite the same as having somebody spot you, but essentially it is an additional aid with the lift. Ask anyone that squats regularly, you can definitely squat more with a belt. You want to learn how to use it properly, but you can definitely squat more with a belt when you know how to use it. When you aren't using a belt, there's obviously more emphasis on using your body to lift the weight. So it's probably a more complete workout, but at the same time, you can't quite lift the same amount. So volume may decrease as a consequence. I think there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both. However, if you can incorporate both unassisted and assisted lifts in your routine, you get the best of both worlds. I think for me personally, I got so used to squatting with a belt after I hurt my back that I was a little bit scared to go without it. But when I did, I guess, forget it one day, I tried, I realized that I probably wasn't engaging my back as much as I should have been, which then prompted the desire to squat without a belt for an extended period of time, just to see how much better I could get. And as a consequence, I was able to build a lot more strength through my back, simply because I had to stay much tighter through the lift without the belt. Then when I went back to using the belt, I felt twice as strong, because all of a sudden I realized that I wasn't really using my back as much as I could, despite the fact I had the belt on. So when I was able to combine the two, it became much easier. So if you can get both in, absolutely do it. Benefits to cutting when you're already lean if you're wanting to grow. I'm not quite sure where this question is coming from, but I think there are certain levels of body fat that are more optimal for muscle growth. I.e., if you gain too much body fat, you may not be in a position to build muscle as optimally as if you were a little bit leaner. So I guess the only real benefit there would be that, essentially. So if you're at a point where you do want to get bigger, but maybe you're thinking that you're probably already carrying a little bit too much body fat, getting leaner initially may ultimately help you bulk or build muscle in a more optimal and efficient manner. Benefits to foam rolling. Okay, heaps. Foam rolling is essentially massage or self-massage. It helps with recovery, helps with aiding blood flow, which obviously helps muscles recover. Helps with muscle tightness, muscle soreness. Obviously, the more flexible and the more movable you feel, the better range you can get. Ultimately, the better workout you can get, the more force you can load through your target muscles. Not to mention, self-myofascial release will also help with greater flexibility in time. So if you can get some foam rolling in, even at the end of a workout, if you want to improve flexibility and really minimize muscle soreness and stiffness after a workout, try and get it in either before your session as well as in between. Doing it post-workout is great. It's going to help you recover from that session. But if you want to make improvements, you need to consider adding more in. So between sessions will definitely help you do that. Are there any benefits to eating more on days that you lift as opposed to rest days when you're trying to bulk? Essentially, no, not really. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether or not you're in a surplus over the course of a week. If it works better for you to eat more food on a day that you lift in comparison to a day that you don't, okay, cool. Is there any advantage to it? Not necessarily. If you're in a surplus, you're in a surplus. You're going to have plenty of energy. You're not going to need to worry about feeling flat on some days, more than likely. Different story when you're dieting. But when you're eating a surplus of calories and you're essentially topping up your fuel tank every day with more than you need, chances are, over the course of a week at least, chances are you're not going to ever really experience the need to eat more on certain days. So there's no benefit. If it works better for you, go for it. Best replacement exercise for squats. Okay, so squats are a great exercise, no doubt about that. They're a huge compound movement which incorporate a lot of muscles. Is there a replacement for them? Not really. If you want to grow a big set of legs, you don't need to squat, absolutely. What I would suggest if you can't squat is to still try and incorporate compound movements into your routine. I mean, for me, for a long time I didn't squat, and I still managed to add some reasonable size to my legs. So for me, it was all about lunging. It was all about leg pressing. I didn't really deadlift a lot, but I did some trap bar stuff at the time. It's pretty crap, but if you can get some more compound stuff in, even weighted step ups, hack squats if you can do that, machine squats even, maybe. At the end of the day, building muscle, as I mentioned before, comes down to increasing volume over time and eating a surplus. The reason squats are so beneficial is that they target a large range of muscles and allow you to translate a large amount of force and volume through them at the one time. Essentially, it's just an efficient exercise for smashing a lot of muscles. If you have plenty of time on your hands, you don't need to do that. So don't be worried if you can't squat or if you don't like squatting. There's no need to do them if you don't want to. It's just a really great way of getting a lot of volume through your target muscles. Plus, it looks pretty boss when you can squat 4 or 5 plates aside. What's the best way to bulk? Okay, as discussed before, slowly. Eat at a controlled calorie surplus. Control the rate at which you gain weight. If you start gaining weight too quickly, bring your intake back a little bit. If you're not gaining weight quite quickly enough, add more calories in. As I said before, I typically stick with between 1 and 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and from there it's all about ensuring you're in a controlled surplus. So, control the surplus, track your results, tweak your program accordingly. Done. What do I think about training one muscle group per day? I think it's crap. If you're a naturally trained athlete, you want to be taking advantage of the natural muscle building cycles. Muscle protein synthesis and tearing down muscles is a much more optimal process when we do it more frequently. Even if you're lifting the same amount of volume over the course of a week, simply splitting that volume up into two or three different sessions is going to be far more beneficial for you. You don't need to hit a DUP style regime. However, that is possibly the most optimal approach to frequency-based training, simply because you can take advantage of those natural muscle building cycles. There are plenty of studies, I've sent them out in my newsletter before, that discuss, sort of, I think 36 hours onwards, your muscles are essentially ready to be torn down again and ready to go. By training muscle groups only once per week, you're essentially wasting a whole bunch of time that you could be training them again and getting even more of a growth response from them. So if you want to train like your favorite pro bodybuilder because they only hit muscle groups once a week, that's cool. At the end of the day, you've got to do what you enjoy. But at the same time, you could be training everything twice as frequently and making twice as much progress. Again, I'll throw some links down in the comment section below, and you can check out my articles on that, and even check out my DEP course as well. Do I ever take rest days, and if so, when? Yeah, absolutely. Rest days are imperative. You simply cannot keep going. We aren't the Energizer bunnies. There will come a point in time where your body has to have a break. Typically, I take a rest day once a week, once a fortnight, depending on how I'm feeling. If I need a rest day, then I'll take a rest day. But I'll definitely take at least one a fortnight, and ideally at least one a week. The only reason I haven't really been doing that lately is because I guess my diet hasn't really been on point. I haven't been tracking my macros as closely as I probably should have been. I've had a few other things going on. As a consequence, I've just ended up doing a little bit of extra cardio here and there. So I've definitely had plenty of days off weight training, but every now and then my rest day might end up involving a little bit of cardio or something like that, just to help pull things in, because I've been eating a few burgers lately, as a few of you might know. How to best protect your knees when squatting. With any leg training, ideally what you want to be doing is avoiding pressing through the toes. Anytime you push through your toes, you'll more than likely find that you're getting a lot of pressure through your knees. If you can push through your heels for the majority of your lower body stuff, as well as even using knee sleeves. I find knee sleeves keep my knees nice and warm and a little bit more mobile while I squat. Your knees should be okay. Added to that, if you can switch to a low bar style of squat, you should find that the center of gravity tracks back a little bit more of your hips rather than your knees. A high bar position or a high bar squat puts you in a very upright position. So as you come down, naturally your weight, or the weight on the back of your neck, is going to be over your knees, placing a little bit more tension through there. I know for me, I definitely found when I was high bar squatting 3 or 4 times a week that after a while my knees did get sore. I had to foam roll a lot, simply because my quads were getting so tight. I would get a bit of pain towards the very bottom of my quad, almost in my knee. As soon as I switched back to a low bar squat, I reduced the frequency a little bit as well. My knees have been fine. So protect your knees by getting some knee sleeves if possible. It will just help keep them warm, as well as potentially looking at low bar squatting. But main thing is to stretch and look after them in between sessions. If you can stretch and foam roll and even get some massage on it, it hurts, but it really does help to release the muscle again, then you'll be okay. I have a short torso and wide hips, but I want to build my V taper. How can I do this? I really don't want to gain all that much weight. Okay, well, sort of 2 different parts to this question. If you have a short torso and wide hips, what you want to be trying to do is accentuate your shoulders and your back. So I would recommend plenty of pull downs, plenty of pull-ups, extensive lat work, as well as lots of shoulder work, simply to throw out that shoulder to hip ratio. If you've got wide hips, you just need to make sure that your back and your shoulders are wider. Building your V taper, as I said, if you get your lats to be bigger, you'll have a more pronounced V shape. If you're wanting to build muscle, however, you are going to need to accept that at some point in time, eating a surplus is going to involve some form of weight gain. So I would just suggest you do so slowly. As I mentioned before, add weight very slowly. Add calories very slowly, and control the rate at which you gain weight. Do I personally use a generic macro ratio of 40% protein, 30% carbs, 30% fat? No. Do not use generic ratios when calculating your macros. The simple reason for this is that your protein intake does not change in line with your calorie intake. If you're cutting, and let's say you start at 3,000 calories, 40% protein at 3,000 calories is a very different number to 40% protein at, say, 2,000 calories, which you may ultimately have to get to in order to get as lean as you wish to be. Protein intake does not change in line with calorie intake. It changes in line with lean muscle mass. If you gain 10 kilos of lean muscle mass, that's going to take you some time, but if you do, then you'll be eating more protein because your body needs more to grow and repair. always try and calculate your needs rather than using a generic ratio. Again, I stick with 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. If you have no experience with tracking your macros, in order to start, I would suggest setting your fats at around sort of 0.35 or 0.4 grams of fat per pound of body weight, and then fill the rest of your calories with carbs. If you find that fats and carbs ratio is a little bit out because you want some slightly different food choices, then change them accordingly. Again, it should be down to your personal preference. But please don't use generic ratios. I've got more information on that in my blog. Again, I'll link down below. Are deloads necessary in DUP? Absolutely. There's going to come a point in time where your body is just going to need a break. As I said before, you cannot keep going. You aren't the Energizer Bunny. Particularly when you're working off loads of 80% and above your 1 rep max. If you're running 2, 3, 4 consecutive blocks of that, chances are you're going to be hitting 90, 92, 94, 95% of your previous 1 rep max for reps. That's very demanding on the body. If you want to keep progressing, you need to ensure that you give yourself some downtime every so often to make sure that you can keep going up. Because if you ever get to the point where you burn out, I can assure you, your progress is not going to just stop. It's going to decrease badly. So make sure that you're taking sort of 3 steps up and then just chilling out for 1. And then 3 more steps up and chilling out for 1, rather than taking 6 steps up and then crashing and burning for 4. And it's an ugly curve, that one. Take deloads. Take deloads. Guys, thanks very much for watching. If you do have any more questions, add me on Snapchat. My name is Nick Cheadle Fit, NickCheadlefit. You can snap me any questions you have and I'll answer you same time next week, okay? For those of you that are wondering, I'm wearing a Better Bodies Athletic Rib Tank. It's anthracite color. I wear a large. Guys, thank you again. Any questions, pop them below.